the RTÉ Rugby World Cup podcast, sponsored by Bank of Ireland.
Yes, welcome along to the RTÉ Rugby World Cup podcast. Ireland against South Africa, just 2 days away, and the excitement has well and truly been ramped up. One of the most anticipated pool games we've seen at the World Cup for quite a few tournaments. And two great guests to pick through the meat of it as well. First, as usual, Bernard Jackman. Birch, good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to have two teams to look at now and chat about.
Yeah, it's getting really close. And also delighted to welcome onto the show AB Zondagh, attack and backs coach at Lyon, and also formerly Gregor Townsend's attack coach at Scotland up until earlier this year, and a man as well with plenty of coaching experience in his native South Africa and working in a few French clubs as well. AB, thanks a million for joining us. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the next couple of weeks and picking your brains of a couple of Irish opponents over the next 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
We will start, guys, with the Ireland team news, because that landed in about 45 minutes ago before we're recording here on Thursday afternoon. Andy Farrell has made just one change from last week's win against Tonga in Nantes. Jamison Gibson-Park comes back into the starting 15. Conor Murray goes to the bench. Also, Dan Sheehan makes his return on the bench. Ronan Kelleher getting the start at hooker, and Rob Herring missing out. So in full, Ireland go with Hugo Keenan at fullback, Mac Hansen and James Lowe on the wings, Gary Ringrose and Bundyaki in the centres, with Johnny Sexton and Gibson Park at scrum half. Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, Tyg Furlong as the front row, Tyg Byrne and James Ryan in the second row, and then a back row of Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer and Caelan Doris, with the replacements then Dan Sheehan, Dave Kilcoyne, Finlay Bealham, Ian Henderson, Ryan Baird, Conor Murray, Jack Crowley and Robbie Henshaw. Birch, a few bits to jump in on there. The main talking points: Ronan Kelleher starts, Dan Sheehan is on the bench and Herring misses out. Tyg Byrne at second row. A bit of speculation last night that Joe McCarthy would get the start and you would go Tyg Byrne in the back row and Van der Fleer on the bench. And also then on the bench, 5 forwards and 3 backs, the standard Andy Farrell split. What's jumped out at you as the main point of interest from that squad?
This is Andy Farrell's tried and tested best choice 15, bar Sheen being on the bench, and we understand why. Obviously, he's come back from injury, and Bundy has got ahead of Robbie Henshaw. So I would say, if you had asked me to name a team start of August, it would have been a toss-up between Robbie and Bundy, and Dan Sheehan would have been starting a hooker. So we haven't got spooked by 6-1, 7-1, 8-0. Farrell is sticking with his 5-3. It's how we operate. It gives us good coverage. Obviously, you've got Conor Murray to come on and obviously, give us a little bit more game management. Crowley he's always going to be on the bench, I think, ahead of Ross Byrne, or not always, but he's more likely to be on the bench ahead of Ross Byrne because he covers fullback, he covers centre quite well, and his game is growing. And then to have Baird, Henderson as your kind of second row and back row, you've got a lot of athleticism and size there. So, look, we're strong. We can't have any excuses. I mean, when you look at the injuries that Springboks have, it's fallen quite well in our favour. Not saying that's going to be easy, but we can't have any excuse. This is pretty much as strong as we could hope to pick in a World Cup, I think.
Yeah, in terms of injuries, Ireland have probably done better than any of the bigger teams, I think, over the last month or so. The other bit, Tyg Byrne starting at second row. As I mentioned, a lot of people, there was a bit of speculation online as well last night. A couple of reports that Joe McCarthy could be sneaking into that second row spot with Byrne back row and Van der Fleer on the bench. Are you pleased personally with the way Farrell has picked it, or would you like to have seen an extra second row in there and Byrne stepping back to the back row?
Yeah, I probably thought a couple of weeks ago that's maybe what we do, but Henderson just hasn't got enough game time really to show. Tyg Byrne has got a lot of game time. He's been excellent. I think it's a sign that we could have tried to match them with Henderson second row, Tyg Byrne 6, and move Peter Manny across to 7. But I think it's a statement that we want to play fast, high ball and play time, and we've gone with a pack who haven't, like, the similar pack played South Africa in November. We didn't take a backward step really. So this pack haven't got bullied by anybody, but they've given us a lot in terms of their mobility. So I think it's the right call.
AB, what do you make of that as an Irish 23 when you look at it?
Yeah, it's quite daunting being a South African looking at that team that they've put out. But Yeah, I think it's a complete team. It's a team that's I think the team that they put out really states the way they're going to play. I don't think there's any hiding from what we can expect from Ireland. It's definitely going to be a speed versus brawn outing. So it's going to be very, very interesting to watch. That's for sure.
The bench and whether Ireland would maybe get tempted into going with 6 forwards on the bench was something people were wondering over the last couple of days. Like, from your position as a coach, when you're laying out these things and you have an idea of how the opposition are going to line up, are they going to have an extra forward? Is a 6-2 bench split something you would often use in Lyon, or do you stick to kind of traditional 3 backs out there?
Yeah, I think maybe the top 14 isn't the best example. It's a very attritional league, so a 6-2 split is very often what you could see, especially in the winter time. But I think what Ireland has done is they've stuck to their guns. They've got a specific DNA of how they want to play, and they've put the right players in the position to hopefully execute on the weekend. I think the big talking point or the thing that I'm most keen to see is the kicking game and what route they're going to go. I believe they'll try and obviously keep ball in hand. The big question is, do they feel there's a threat from South Africa in terms of the way the game is developed in the last year or two? Do they feel they can put pressure on someone like Cheslin Kolbe because of his height, although he can nearly jump 2 meters in the air? Are they going to try and pick out individuals? Are they going to kick long, or are they going to kick contestables? So that's the real big question mark for me.
So on the kicking, Birch, is it a case of trying to keep that ball in play to keep the ball in play time as high as possible, do you think?
Yeah, I think we have to. We want to keep it on. I don't think you want to give. Look, you can't avoid defending the South African maul, but ideally that would be from the little couple of penalties you give away where they kick down the line and they go after you there. You don't want to be kicking it out too much. I think we have to go to the air. I don't think anybody has the energy or the skill set to just go all out attack against the box. You got to pick your fights and field position, not just in terms of being in their half, but where the ruck is going to be massive. So there's been a huge amount of, like, when people look at South African defense, the Jacques Nienaber defense, it's incredibly aggressive. It's
loud,
very, very high, but very narrow. It gets narrow as you make a pass. It gets narrower and narrower. And if you do a freeze frame at certain points, you just see all this space, and it's so easy to get carried away by that. And in some ways, it can be fool's gold. What they do incredibly well, their scramble is ridiculous. So when Arnese or Cheslin Kolbe shoots in, 3 or 4 players corner flag, and they have got athleticism, and they scramble, they hunt you down and catch you near the edge and go after that breakdown, and then it's a shit fight. So that's the thing that they do differently. Lots of teams blitz, but it's how the South African players work for each other to cover up that. So against South Africa in November, there's a few passes that you try to go over the top, but sometimes they don't sit down in time. The ball's in the air for too long, and the scramble gets you anyway. So I'd love to hear AB's thoughts on this, but I think the way Ireland is set up to attack is ideal to play against that blitz, because we have a lot of bodies in and around the ball. We have a lot of short passes, the in, out to back, carry. So the ball isn't in the air anywhere near as long as it was again for Scotland, to use that as probably the worst case example a few weeks ago. But for me, if we can have rucks on the 15-meter line, that will force them to hold 3 on the blind side. And I think that gives us a chance of going through them or around them. But I think if you get to the edge, you probably have to go to the air. That's like, honestly, you probably have to go to the air again off a ruck that's in the 15. And it's going to be really interesting how Sexton manages that desire to play, but also to create rucks in areas of the field where we can hopefully hurt them on the next phase. Yeah,
I think previously in the autumn, as you said, Birch, Ireland struggled to get into those 15s cleanly, and to really get a bend on South Africa. But I do think they might come out early with a couple of kicks just over the top to try and sit them down. The classic strategy at the beginning. I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing first phase, second phase kicking plays behind into that little bit of kick space. And I'd also expect Johnny Sexton to expose that wide space. If they do get into those 15 meters, they do get a little bit of a bend. I wouldn't be surprised if the ball goes straight back to Sexton and he pushes it straight across into the touchline to try and expose that space. Because as you say, if you play it by hand, it takes too long, and then the catch-up D will get to you. Whereas a kick pass would really expose that space and could cause problems for South Africa.
So AB, blitz defense, you're playing against it with Lyon or Scotland. Do you try and go over it with a kick, around it with passes, or play through it, or all three?
For me, I think Ireland have the ability to cause South Africa problems because you can get it wrong if you don't have the time to adjust, because they're coming so hard and the passes, as you say, is so short. There's not a lot of ball in air time. It can quickly go wrong for South Africa. So I think it's the ideal teams, the ideal type of attack to play against this type of defense. We've been talking for a while now, but for me, it's the best one of the best attacks in the world versus the best defense in the world. So it's going to be a really interesting match to watch. I don't think Ireland's going to veer off from what they do. They're going to back their skill set. I mean, if you watch the last two games, there are tight from 1 to 8. The skill set of the forwards is just so tight. The timing is so good. They create the opportunity to play those one-on-ones. And even if South Africa is more physically dominant than Ireland, if you are creating one-on-one opportunities, they have the ability to keep the ball alive and to go through. So I do think Ireland are going to get the opportunity to go through South Africa. The big thing for me is, can South Africa force errors? Can they force those turnovers and get the ball back to go and score off Ireland's possession? That's the big question. If South Africa get it right early on in the game, they're going to spook them. And then it might be tough for Ireland to get back into the game.
And Birch, one other bit then on the Irish attack. How does Bundee Aki feature in what they're going to be doing? Because obviously he wasn't there when the sides met in November, and Stuart McCluskey was doing quite well until he got injured. Jimmy O'Brien then came on, and obviously Ireland had to change around just positionally what they were doing there. But like on the podcast we had on Tuesday, excuse me, Mick Carney spoke about how, for example, like if Bundee Aki is able to get that gain line success, he's almost like another set piece for Ireland where they can, use him to keep players honest and suck players in. Like, how do you think he's going to feature in what Ireland will be doing at the weekend?
He'll feature a hell of a lot, because I think Ireland won't play exclusively 9 to 10, and then a pod off 10. I think they'll play 9 to 12 a lot, and he'll have options in around him, but also an option at the back to Sexton. I think we got to try and get Sexton getting touches off second pass, third pass plays, because he has that passing ability and that sense of what the defense are doing. Because it's very hard. I mean, it looks easy when you have a pause button and you say, "Oh, why didn't you hit that pass there?" But it's effectively it's muscle memory, and he has faced it so often, or faced similar. He hasn't faced as intense as this will be, but he's faced similar a lot of times. And you want those playmakers getting the ball in areas of position that can hurt you, because realistically, I don't think off a 15-meter ruck or in the edge, 9 to 10 to Sexton, he can't really hurt you. He can set somebody up to do some damage, but he can't hurt you. Whereas I think if you play him out the back of Bundee or those forward pods, the killer pass, the killer kick is more likely to be in his locker than someone else's, and that's why he's so good, and that's why he's so important to Ireland. I mean, there was a clip for one of the tries against Romania off a line out. He touched the ball not just touched it. He had a big hand in 8 out of 10 phases. That's how often he's involved. And it was Romania, and we went from our own 40 to the try line. But effectively, we kind of need him to be getting that quota of touches. But I don't think it's always. If he's getting too many as a first receiver, I think it will be easier to shut down.
And AB, like, you look at Sexton, obviously you would have analysed what Ireland are doing when you were at Scotland. We often speak about it here, about how different a team Ireland are when he is playing versus when he isn't. What would you have seen when you would have been analysing Ireland in your Scotland days?
I think the first thing that strikes you is just his game management, his leadership. Like, it's, as you say, it's a different team when he's on the field. I think the guys that are in the shadows are getting closer, and it's soon going to be time to hand over the baton, but not yet. I think he's integral. He's the pivot for me of the Ireland attack. I think if he touch wood, obviously I don't want it to happen, but if he had to go off early, I think it would be a massive blow for Ireland's attack. I think he's one of the very few fly-offs in the world that can handle the pressure of a South African rush defense.
And Birch, like, not to kind of constantly go back on it, but mentioning his age again, obviously he's 38 years old. And I think if you had said to so many Irish fans this time 4 years ago, after losing to New Zealand in a quarter-final, that Ireland were going to be going to the World Cup with Johnny Sexton as the starting out half, no offense to him, but I think a lot of people would have assumed that there was something probably wrong with the Irish setup, that we were still relying on a player at that stage. But he has somewhere between 2 and potentially 4 or 5 more games before he retires, and at 38 years old, he looks as sharp as he has at any stage in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and it's incredible how the perception and the pundits and some of the fans saw it. I mean, there was people calling for him to stop, right? And now actually there's people saying, like smart people like Brian Juska saying, well, why would you stop? Why wouldn't you just go until the end of the season and try and win a Champions Cup with Leinster, for example, which obviously was his goal for last year, but injury robbed him of the opportunity. So but that's testament to him. That's testament to his ability to, like, AB knows this better than I do, but the game isn't getting any easier. The game is getting harder. He's been there, done that. His body's taken all the hits. He's had to do a preseason, which was basically around rehab, and then be suspended. But he's managed to get to this World Cup and not shown any sign of his age, which is testament to his professionalism and dedication. But I think everyone has to say stop some stage, but he's given himself the best possible opportunity of doing something special at World Cups where he's shared a lot of disappointment, like so many of us.
Yeah, and it is just great in general to see a sports person going out when they're still at the top of their game. AB, to move things on to South Africa's attack, and world champions 4 years ago, they're obviously big contenders again this time around in 2023. And as we've seen, particularly in the last 18 months, have moved on their game quite a bit. Birch has spoken to us a good bit about that over the last few months. What changes have you seen in what Jacques Nienaber is doing over the last 12 or 18 months?
Yeah, I think it's just the variety in the attack. They've opened up so many more avenues, so many more areas of the game, which make them, for me, a total threat. They're also like Ireland's not going to go away from their speed game, their highly technical game. South Africa's not going to go away from the power game. They are first and foremostly there to try and physically dominate you. That is the bare bones of it. But I think they've added a lot of little bits to that. They've added a very big tactical kicking element to it. I think Manie Limmok brings in a really new, fresh angle to our attack. Damien Willemse in the back. I feel like the kicking game has evolved. It's not just a kick chase pressure game. It's now we can find space. We can kick pass. We can touch the edges of the field very quickly. I think it was the game in the autumn against the Irish where they were running the ball back quite a bit on counter-attack to counter the high possession. So they would run the ball back, keep the ball for 2-3 phases, and then only kick. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. The nice thing for me is South Africa can pivot now. Usually it's South Africa is going to play. This is the way they're going to play. Today we're asking ourselves, okay, we know they're going to come physically, but what else are they going to bring? What else do they have up their sleeve? Because they now do have the ability to surprise you, which for me is awesome.
And crucially, Birch, obviously, it's not a case that they've changed their game. The thing that they were good at 4 years ago, they're still very, very good at. It's just that they've added some nice bells and whistles to it as well.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been really interesting for me as an Irish ex-coach to watch Felix Jones' kind of role, because like if you think back, he got the job very late before the last World Cup. Obviously, the attack coach left for health reasons, and effectively, it was the start of this journey. I mean, Rassie has said 2019 was a bonus, 2023 was what it's all about. So I think there always was the intention to add attacking elements to it, but certainly going into 2019 was based around set piece, defense, kicking game, and I think we've seen an involvement in the attack in particular. But they know what they want. Like it sounds cheesy listening to Chasing the Sun or whatever, but any of the inserts we get to the mentality, it's fucked them up. You know what I mean? Like that's what they say behind the scenes, and that's great. That's part of the South African rugby's DNA. It doesn't mean they're not skillful, doesn't mean they can't be creative, but that's who they are. That's who they are. The All Blacks has mainly been built around skill and having forwards who could play like backs, etc. England has been more 10-man rugby, traditionally, etc. France has always been moments of magic and moments of craziness. Just doing having more moments of magic at the moment. So I think they have evolved, and they will certainly hurt you if you don't defend properly. But I don't think it's going to be the biggest test of the day. I think it's going to be how we can handle their obviously set piece. I think we can stop them up front. I don't think we get blown away there. It won't be like the England World Cup final where the scrum was just the Achilles heel. But can we take away energy from their game by hurting them with the ball? And that doesn't have to be running it. As AB has said, it can be kicking it. But I think we have to do that, or it becomes suffocation, and it's horrible. So yeah, but Ireland have been building for this. Like it's 4 years worth of work to have the skill set to be able to maybe execute 2 passes in a millisecond. So that's the margins.
Yeah, I think the big turning point is going to be what happens at the breakdown. If you look at that 7-1 split, you could Ireland could be facing a total of 5-6 fetches on the field at one time. So there's no hiding that strategy, I think, either. South Africa is going into that game to absolutely disrupt their attack, to slow down their ball, to turn their ball over. And that's probably bigger than the kicking game, bigger than the physical game. That's where the game's going to be won and lost first and foremost.
I think that's really interesting because we think of the bomb squad as 7 forwards are going on and power game up front. I actually think the challenge for us is the last 20 minutes is being able to keep the ball at the breakdown, because it's ridiculous the threat that they're bringing on. I mean, if you have Van Staden, Dion Fourie, Waga, Smith on the field at the same time, when you're tired, when the game traditionally has become easier to win the ball, and the last quarter statistically is Ireland's best by a long way. So at the time when we were hoping to increase the tempo maybe, or to find holes, if every single breakdown is an absolute car crash and slow, well then we're screwed. So the bomb squad this week is basically it's the breakdown squad.
Yeah. If that ball is slow, South Africa's got a much bigger chance of getting to Sexton, getting up into that space and cutting off their options. So that's for me that's the key.
I think we've done well to make it as far into the pod with this point being where we're actually bringing up the 7-1 split. I think we've done well to talk about other things. Out of curiosity, before I get into a bit more about that, who in the South African pack is the 80-minute forward in there? Is it Pieter-Steph du Toit?
Pieter-Steph du Toit any day. He's got a massive engine. I'm thinking back to early days now. Early days at the Sharks. He does not stop. He just does not stop. He's got a massive engine. He's hard as nails. More skillful than he seems. I think he very much plays within himself. Obviously, he's within a team that expects certain things of him, and he's probably been shaped in the last couple of years. But he does have the ability to shift the ball. But I mean, his his strength is battering through people, hitting rucks, and being an absolute workhorse for 80 minutes. That's for sure.
And he's built like a second row as well, Birch. That's it's an all important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no. Look, there's been so much talk about it. I love it. I love the fact that South Africa are trying something different. I know they have the profile of players to that can actually do it. Smith obviously being Quagga being an ex-sevens man. Faf can play 10. Hendrick Reinhardt can play wing, etc. But it's a risk. It's a risk. But
It is a risk.
They're being brave. They're being brave and give us something to talk about, something different. They named their team early. I really like it. I enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's exactly the note I made here is brave. I think it's a brave choice, and it can pay. That's the thing with games like this. You need something special. You need something different, and they're willing to risk it. I do think, however, a player like Quagga, if you take what South Africa want from an inside centre, Damian Dalende, they want him to be able to carry the ball well. They want him to be hard as nails on defence and maybe turn the ball over every now and then in the midfield. So I think between Quagga and Damian, there's not that much difference, except maybe the little grubber every now and then that Damian is able to do.
Yeah, I really had, particularly this week. I think in the week after the All Blacks New Zealand game or the All Blacks South Africa game, there was maybe a little bit too much negative coverage around us that we had to kind of wade through. But I think this week, so much of the conversation has just been about the benefits and the risks involved with doing it. Whereas as you said, like if it works out, it works out brilliantly. But what's just fascinating, Birch, is that if there's a couple of early injuries in key areas, and if for example, Dion Fourie has to throw a line out in the late in the game, and he throws it crooked an Ireland win, or if there's a mistake, a missed tackle in midfield from a Quagga Smith or something like that, there's so much pressure on Jacques Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus that if it goes wrong, it's a colossal error.
Yeah, it's a colossal error, but they live on. This isn't a World Cup quarterfinal or semi-final, even though we're hyping it up like it is. Like South Africa can fail and still win a World Cup.
Yeah.
I would be worried about our chances of doing the same, to be honest. I think if we lose to a team who've taken that risk, who've had injuries like Malcolm Marx, Ludwiger, etc., have a have an ace card to play by bringing Andre Pollard in after this. You know what I mean? Like South Africa, unless they don't turn up and get beaten by 40, which is ridiculously think about it, South Africa can still go on and win a World Cup from here, you know. Whereas if we weren't to pitch or attack, you know, just didn't show any ability to get over the gain line, etc., it's very hard then to make a plan B, you know. And I know you can obviously go out and do it again, but I think that's the challenge for us. I think Nienaber and Rassie, by having Scotland first, by winning that, they're true, and they can afford now to play the mind games a little bit and test things out. I also think just it's worth noting that even a country like South Africa, who have an unbelievable squad, they don't have 3 world-class hookers, right? Like the reason Dion Fourie is a phenomenal player, Marco van Staden is a very phenomenal player, but the reality is, if they really believe in the next hooker, they would have been pushed to make a call on that. Like that's the reality. The fellas who can help you win a World Cup, they're not on trees, even in South Africa.
Yeah. A couple of other bits. Like even as a side, I don't want to get into it, but I've enjoyed the coverage of 7-1 and just because it's actually distracted from things that have gone under the radar. I think it's been great in general that we haven't heard a word of Ben O'Keefe being the referee, given the previous with Rassie Erasmus. I just think it's actually nice that his name has barely been mentioned. And also then as well, the fact that Jacques Nienaber is going to be rocking up in Dublin to coach Leinster in a couple of months' time. It adds another layer onto it as well. Since Birch mentioned worries about, you know, if Ireland were to lose this week and having to play Scotland then in 2 weeks, I might actually move the conversation on to Scotland then, because obviously they're playing Tonga this Sunday afternoon, looking to bounce back after their break, after being beaten by South Africa, and I think most people would probably expect them to win as well. But AB, obviously, you have, as we mentioned, a good bit of experience in the Scotland camp after about 18 months as attack coach with Gregor Townsend. Really interested to hear about what it was like working with him, and obviously some of the brilliant attacking talent you would have got to work with, namely Finn Russell also as well.
No, I mean, my time at Scotland, I thoroughly enjoyed. Gregor was a great mentor to me. I learned a lot during my time. I really enjoyed it. The players that I got to work with, absolutely amazing. A couple of South Africans in there, which also helped my integration. But no, look, a guy like Finn, he's got a reputation, I suppose. It's not something that I didn't have a preconceived idea of, how is he going to be. What I obviously knew what kind of player he was, because I've been watching him for a very long time. But the one thing that struck me about him was his professionalism. He's highly professional. He prepares incredibly well for each game that he plays. So he's not just the maverick that pitches up, doesn't train on a Monday, and does absolutely everything that's flash without a lot of thought and a lot of training going into it. So that's probably the biggest thing that I learned, is to be that good, you have to be able to prepare well. It doesn't just, I would say a lot of it comes naturally, but a lot of it is also down to meticulous preparation.
I know you might be biased on it, but would you think that too many people are talking about this pool being South Africa and Ireland and potentially forgetting about Scotland?
100%. I went down actually to go and watch that first game, and it was disappointing for me, because I really believed that Scotland would put up a big fight. I think just on the day it didn't operate. Set piece wise, they really struggled more so than they, I think, should have against South Africa, and probably just too much ball that went through 10. I think maybe a little bit too dependent on wanting Finn to make something happen, instead of maybe backing the team as a whole to get the job done against South Africa. But that's in the past now. I know they would have moved on. I know they'll prepare really well and really seriously for this next game. I don't think it's going to be easy. It's a game that when I arrived and I saw the draw, I was like, this is going to be one that we're going to have to be careful with. It can really be a banana peel. So I think Scotland will be ready for this game against Tonga.
And from an Irish point of view, Bert, win or lose on Saturday, there has to be an element of relief that Ireland have a weekend off before they have to go play Scotland as well.
Yeah, and that's probably because of the way Farrell has set his team up, in terms of we've gone strong. But I think the week off will come. I think it'll come at a good time for us, if regardless of whether we win or lose. But like Scotland had the week off just after South Africa, so they had that loss, and then they got 2 weeks to the next game. That's not ideal, I think. But the fact we've already got rid of Romania, Tonga, got maximum points, etc. If we have to go and beat Scotland, well, we'll have to beat them. But like we'll get ourselves ready for that regardless. And based on past history, we've had their number. Are they a dangerous team? Absolutely. But yeah, I still, I'd be very comfortable if we can win that at the end if we have to.
And AB, based on your experiences then, like, what have you seen from them since January, since you moved on? Have they stuck to the plans that you were trying to implement back when you were there, or is there a bit of a difference since you've left?
No, I think, look, it's a team that has a very specific DNA. It's a team that likes to move the ball around. A lot of the game does revolve around their big players. They try and put their best players in positions to touch the ball more, which makes sense. But no, I haven't really seen that much of a difference. I do think the depth of the squad, especially in front, is probably has been the big issue for Scotland, and will continue to be an issue. So it's, first of all, how long are they prepared to go? How deep are those starters prepared to go, and how fit they are? I know they've had a really good preparation, so I do think it's possible for the big names to stay on the field longer. But the difference comes in when that bench changes. Can they bring the same intensity? Can they keep the same quality? And in the end, that comes down to the coaching and to the upskilling of those players.
Do you think the belief is there that that they truly believe that they can turn over someone like Ireland? Because it has been a criticism labelled at them for a few years.
I feel like the Irish team is a bit of the black sheep, because it's just the one that they just can't get across the line. I wouldn't, the way Ireland's playing at the moment, and with the last game against South Africa, I think it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough for Scotland, but I wouldn't put past them. They definitely have a chance, but the odds are stacked against them.
And I think, regardless from a Scottish point of view, Birch, what happens them over the next few weeks, if they put in 2 big wins against Tonga and against Romania over the next couple of weeks, and if they come up short against Ireland and just miss out in that quarter-final spot, there's still a lot there for them that they're surely not going to be too disheartened by the whole experience.
No, look at them to not qualify for the second World Cup in a row. It would be a big blow to them, I think, particularly.
It would be a very different kind of blow, though.
No, it would be. Look at the last time, Japan got out on ahead of them, didn't they? So they know they've got a tough group. They decided to stick with Gregor, which wasn't 100% sure was going to happen. Obviously, earlier in the year, but they now decided to stick with him. They probably have enough stability, but they'd have to get some good performances in this World Cup. You know what I mean? They'll have to go and beat Tonga pretty well, given how Ireland did it. They'll have to be competitive against Ireland, before you could say that they're up to 5th in the world, or they were going into it. I'm not sure if they really are 5th in the world, to be fair. I think that flatters them a little bit. But if they can show that they genuinely were of that ranking by being very competitive against Ireland, and putting away Tonga and Romania, well then they can build on that. But I don't know. I think 5th flatters them a little bit, to be fair.
There's a couple of other things I want to mention, but I'll round back to just a final prediction for this Saturday. Ireland, South Africa. What way is it going to go, Birch?
Ireland by 6.
By 6. And AB?
South Africa by 3.
All right. Well, it's going to plan. We had BJ both, and we had Mick Carney on the pod on Tuesday, and it was 1 vote apiece between South Africa and Ireland as well. So we're 2-2 here. Couple of other bits I want to touch on. Pardon?
2 Patriots, yeah.
2 Patriots here, yeah. Couple of other bits I do want to talk about. France playing this evening against Namibia. By the time a lot of people listen to this podcast, that game will be done, and I think we probably just assume France will have won. But obviously, AB, as we mentioned, you're coaching in Lyon. You have a couple of players in the squad at the moment, and previously you would have coached at Toulouse, where you would have worked alongside Antoine Dupont and Roman Intimac, and they're kind of not so much formative years, but around 2021 when you won a Heineken Cup and won the double actually in the top 14 as well. I'm sure absolutely fascinating to have been able to work alongside a player like Dupont.
Yeah, it was. Look, he's the first impression that I got from him is just a quiet guy, goes about his business, freakishly talented, super strong, super fast, highly skilled. But the thing that I've really liked watching is the way he's developed, not only as a player but as a leader. And he's smart. He's really rugby smart. He's smart in general, but in terms of rugby, it's one of those things where you coach and you get to a huddle and they've already started speaking, and you look and you go, he's just said what I wanted to say. You have those moments more so than not when Antoine is training with you. So a really exceptional player. I mean, everybody knows that it's obvious to see, but for me, he's really come on leaps and bounds in terms of leadership and just putting himself out there in front and talking.
On the ground in France in general, what's the feeling among a lot of the public around what the team are doing at the moment? Is there, you come to Ireland and there's so many people who are obviously confident that Ireland can go all the way, but there's a huge amount, and Bert, I'm sure you've met loads as well, that are just terrified that it's all going to blow up over the next couple of weeks. Is there a general level of confidence in France that this is the year for them?
Yeah, I think the confidence. Oh, sorry, was that for me or was that for?
Yeah, it was for you. Yeah.
I think the confidence was at 100%. just before the World Cup, and then 1 or 2 injuries. It slowly dipped down, and after that last game, I think people are getting a little bit worried in France. But I think after tonight's match, everything will be back to square one. Everyone will be behind the team again, and I think they're going to make a strong run for the final.
And we'll talk about Australia in a second, Birch, but like Australia, it seems like are trying to do what France were doing a few years ago, where they're playing one World Cup in preparation for the next one. And when you look back at the way they've developed over these last few years, obviously you know quite a lot about French rugby, but this tournament and this team at this tournament has been roadmapped from quite a way out.
Yeah, look, France there'll be case studies done on it if they go and win it in Harvard Business School around all the different pieces of the jigsaw that aligned to get it right. I understand what you're saying about Australia, but I think it's different. I mean, Galtier was shadowing at the last World Cup with a view to taking over. There's a player pool in France, which is far greater than what's in Australia at the moment. There's a financial power there, whereas Australia, like Eddie Jones, is seemingly staying with Australia, whether they win or lose against Wales and don't qualify, and they're competing. I know football is massive in France, but realistically, so is rugby. Whereas in Australia, you know, it's not the main game or the second game or maybe even the third game. So, but the worry for me is you have a world power like Australia who could be slipping away, and it's great someone like Fiji can come and maybe take their place. But the reality is, our game needs 12, 13 strong teams, and then other tier 2 teams pushing towards that. So that's a little bit of a worry. I think it's going to be a fascinating game on Saturday. I don't think either team or Sunday. I don't think either team are brilliant. But whoever gets out of it will probably be job done. Like, I mean, if Wales get to a quarterfinal, given where they were a few months ago, you know, losing to Georgia and Italy, etc., and Australia get there, given that they've only won 1 out of the last 6, I think then you say to both Eddie Jones and Warren Gatland, you know, you've done what you were brought in to do. And for obviously the beauty for Eddie Jones is he does have a Lions tour to get ready for. He has a home World Cup to get ready for, which is going to bring some money in and some interest in rugby union. Whereas for Wales, if Wales were to lose this game, okay, they still have the 6 nations, but given the way the regions are, they're not going to get an influx of money like you do if you have a Lions tour. They could be looking at 3 or 4 years in the doldrums, and obviously the bigger stepping away. And I think Farrell, we don't know how much longer he's going to go on, etc. So that golden generation are nearly all finished as well. So yeah, I'd be worried about both teams' future, to be honest.
Yeah, AB, it's something that we've obviously discussed a lot here in Ireland over the last 12 months, probably. But the way the pools have been weighted and how strong, for example, the Irish, South Africa, Scotland pool is in comparison to the pool with Australia, Wales, and Fiji, Georgia, and Portugal, as well as Pool D as well. But what it has done, we mightn't be too pleased about it. What it has done is it has created a wide open pool where you have teams like Australia, Wales, and Fiji that are all at a decent level, but are very, very flawed as well. And it creates some exciting games, as we've seen so far.
100%. I think more so focusing on the game for this weekend, I think it's 2 teams that are, you know, they're struggling with confidence, and I think that's going to have a massive effect mentally on the game this weekend. I think the team that gets ahead first has a massive advantage, even if it is by luck, just because you can see it's 2 teams that really are struggling with confidence. They are trying. I mean, no team pitches up at the World Cup not aiming to win each game. But at the moment, it's as you say, it's definitely a level below what we're seeing in some of the other pools. And
just quickly then, Birch, as well, obviously, it's at the end of it's Warren Gatland versus Eddie Jones on top of it.
Yeah, the 2 old timers still gunslinging. Gatland's been quiet this week. I think he's just letting Eddie kind of take the flack that he's getting, and it's but yeah, I admire both of them. I think you don't get to do what they do in the game without having a serious level of ability. But there was an interesting Eddie obviously is, I think, and look at who might criticize Eddie Jones, but just I wonder, has he got caught up in always trying to be too far ahead of where the game is going, and not focusing on the basics, and the fact that he brought 3 sports psychologists with him to France. I mean, that's mind-boggling. You know what I mean? Because he does a lot of it himself as well. So, and then the comparison with Fijians, Simon Raului, the Fijian coach, you know, he was asked about the resources and he was asked about the 3 sports psychologists, and he said, "Oh, we don't have the luxury of that, but we have a reverend." And he's like a sports psychologist for us, because for us it's about faith in our family, you know, and it is the Fijians, and you know, we've both been lucky enough, AB, to coach them, and that is a massive driver for them. But it's just this, you know, the Eddie Jones circus, and maybe he is still the brightest brain in rugby, and he's going to bring Australia to where Dave Rennie couldn't bring them. But at the moment, you would have to start to have some doubts.
I just feel I could imagine as a player with so much attention on a coach that it can place negative pressure onto the team and onto individuals in that team. So me personally, I don't think it's great for the team. Same as Birch, in terms of a coach, what can we say? He's one of the best that's ever been. But in terms of the psychological side of it and the pressure that you put on your team when you're always, you know, making headlines, I think maybe it's not always the best thing.
Yeah, and a perfect example, AB, is they were at the airport leaving to go to the World Cup, a young squad, the highlight of most of their careers, and they would have landed in France and seen those, you know, the crazy press conference and the aggro. You know, it's just, even when it's not necessarily to pick fights at the moment, he seems to want to pick them. But anyway.
That's almost everything. Bert, do you have one more?
Yeah, just AB. I know you're very focused on Lyon, but you and your coaching group, is there anything in the World Cup so far, trends, style of play, that you're kind of going, that's where the game is going, or because it's top 14 and it's a law unto itself, or you just trying to get your own stuff right? But is there anything that's kind of stood out to you, as in, oh, I think that in a year's time, you know, could be very much part of everybody's arsenal?
I was actually speaking earlier to Alan Kingsley, and something we've spotted in the last couple of months, and something that we think is going to develop into something bigger, is that middle kick space in the middle of the field or higher up the field. It's still something that isn't exposed enough, in our opinion, but more and more teams are starting to do it. I think there's always cycles of these different things. You go through a cross kick cycle, and then you go through a drop kick cycle, and I think the next cycle is going to be that midfield space, but maybe exposed in a different way. Maybe it's not short kicks from 10 or 9 over the top of the ruck. Maybe it's going to be more aerial assaults that really hang in the air and give you an opportunity to contest, and make it really awkward for those players in the backfield to, one, decide who's going for it, and two, to actually just get there. If you sometimes, or nearly every game that I watch, I see a poor executed box kick that turns out so well, and I think that's kind of the tangent that we were talking about. Like, you know, if you kick that box kick, but you actually don't kick it that well, and it doesn't hang that long, and it doesn't go that far, it's actually in a brilliant position. So probably the variety of that midfield and how you can expose it is the next thing for me.
Brilliant. Well, I've got a session with the Presbray under 13s in about 10 minutes, so we're going to be looking for that space for the rest of the year. We're going to be ahead of the curve. Eddie Jones esque.
Brilliant.
Out of curiosity, you said there aren't enough teams doing it. Are there any teams at the moment who you think are doing it a little bit, if people want to look out for it over the next few weeks on their TV?
I reckon Ireland this weekend will have one or two up their sleeve.
Good
That's
answer.
Just a prediction.
Good answer. Brilliant stuff, guys. Quickly before we go, a lot of rugby coming your way on RTÉ over the next few days. TV coverage of France v Namibia tonight, Thursday. Then Friday, 4:45 p.m. you have Argentina v Samoa, as well as Ireland and South Africa, 8 o'clock on Saturday. And then Scotland v Tonga on Sunday at 4:45. Fellas, thanks a million for joining us. This has been a really, really enjoyable chat, and we'll be back on the pod next Tuesday, recapping the weekend's rugby. We'll speak to you then soon.
The RTÉ Rugby World Cup podcast, sponsored by Bank of Ireland.